thank you for logging in for this presentation. My name is Peter Turner and I'm the Deputy Director at the Basildon and Thurrock Samaritans. Next slide please, Ashley. Today I will talk about who we are, i.e. personnel, why we're here, what we actually do. A lot of people don't realise what we actually do, and how you can help us if necessary. Just as a glance, the next slide please, Ashley. This is Samaritan service at a glance. As you can see, somebody calls Samaritans every 10 seconds throughout the country. We have 200 branches, over 200 branches in England, Scotland, Wales, North and Southern Ireland, and you will also see we also have a branch in Guernsey. We're made up of over 22,000 volunteers, and all branches are staffed by volunteers. We obviously have employees in our head office, most of whom also volunteer, but the branches are all manned by volunteers. It's a free telephone number to call on either a landline or on a mobile phone from anywhere in the country, and our number is shown there as 116 123. People who use our helplines are suffering at that time a significant reduction in distress, and that's our purpose, is to try to reduce that distress. We're open 24 hours a day, 365 days in the year. That's not to say that every branch is open 24 hours, because we haven't got enough volunteers for that, but we're on a rota. But some of the bigger branches are open actually 24 hours a day. And our volunteers spend over 1 million hours a year responding to calls for help. Next slide please, Ashley. Now this is a little bit of a history lesson. That's our Dr. Chad, who founded the Samaritans, a picture of him in the early 1950s. And he said, a man willing to listen with a base and an emergency telephone. That's how he set up the Samaritans. He became the rector of a City of London church, and he decided as a young curate to invite members of the community to come in and speak to him. But then it got so popular on the Saturday morning, he invited some parishioners to come and make a cup of tea for these people who were coming to see him whilst they were waiting. And he found that people were speaking more to the people who were making the tea than him. So that's the early part of Samaritans. He dedicated his life to helping people, and he wanted to find different ways in which he could help people. And he then formed the very early form of the Samaritans. They weren't called Samaritans at that stage, but an article in the Daily Mirror newspaper, one of the leading papers in those times, and they were describing what he was forming and what he was aiming to do, and it was them that called the volunteers these Good Samaritans. And that's how we got the name Samaritans. We are not a religious organisation in any way. We are a non-establishment, and we have people of all religions and faiths who volunteer for our service. Next slide, please. As volunteers, we're ordinary people from very different backgrounds, with one common goal: to be there for our callers. We give our callers time and attention freely, and we are not paid in any way for our service. We aren't professionals, and we don't offer counselling, but we will direct callers to other services if it becomes apparent it is the right thing to do. We all undergo an intensive initial training, and we have yearly training throughout our service. And that training is very highly recognised in outside organisations. By the time a volunteer's completed their initial training, they're able to listen by giving their whole attention to the person they're supporting, which is very important. Checking they've understood by summarising what has been said. Communicated warmth, calmness through their tone of voice, or through our email system, which I'll speak about in a moment. Appreciating how the caller feels rather than how the volunteer would feel in their situation. Asking gentle, open questions to help people explore their thoughts and feelings in any depth. And it's important that we ask the open questions, because this is what allows the people to open up. We're non-judgmental, and we are always willing to listen to the person. Next slide, please. Why what we do matters. As you can see here, suicide is quite enormous when you consider the numbers. Suicide is the biggest killer of men under 50 and young people between the age of 16 and 24. In the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland in 2018, and that's when the last statistics were available, 6,944 people took their own life, 3/4 of whom were men. It's a tragedy that the 16 to 24-year-olds, it's the biggest killer. Suicide is complex, and behind these statistics are individuals, each with their own unique story, and every suicide has a devastating impact on the person's family, friends, colleagues, and community. Believe it or not, suicide is not equal. If you're in a less well-off and now, you are 10 times more likely to die by suicide than more well-off men. In England, in 2018, 5,021 suicides were registered, 76% were male and 24% were female. Between 2017 and 2018 in England, there's been an overall increase of 12% within the suicide rates, without going through all the details, in Scotland, the increase was 14.1% in the same period. In Wales, there was a decrease of 3%, and in Northern Ireland there was a 0.4% decrease. And in the Republic of Ireland, there was an increase of 11.7% during the same period. Next slide, please. Our values. These are the values, shared values, which shape everything we do. Listening, and it's very difficult to listen without talking too much. We maintain total confidentiality unless there is a safeguarding issue that's been identified. And we do have strict procedures, what we do with children and or vulnerable adults. We are non-judgmental, which is sometimes quite difficult for newly qualified Samaritans. We allow our callers to make their own decisions. And we believe that people have the right to find their own solution, and that telling people what to do takes responsibility away from them. And that is very important. Human contact, giving people time, undivided attention, empathy, meets the fundamental emotional need and reduces distress and despair, which is obviously the important part. Next slide, please. Samaritan's vision is that fewer people die by suicide, which is very important. We're here for anyone who is struggling to cope. There's no typical person who contacts us and no typical problem. Callers talk to us about anything and everything, and we allow them to do so. We get callers who ring us about stress at work, being unemployed, financial problems, struggles within their family, relationship issues. You sometimes feel you might be a relationship counsellor rather than a Samaritans operation. They also ring us about feeling isolated. Obviously during COVID, we had lots of calls from people who felt very isolated, feeling sad, getting into trouble, being abused, alcohol or drug addiction, and feeling suicidal. It doesn't matter what the problem is, sometimes people just get to a point where they feel they just cannot cope, where it feels too much to carry on, and it can get worse if they feel they can't talk to anyone, but they can pick up the phone and talk to one of our operators. It's sometimes difficult for that person to talk to a friend or a family member, but they can talk to us in total confidence that there's only us and them, and they don't know who they're talking to. You do not have to be suicidal to contact us. People think that we're only there for people with suicidal thoughts, but they can, as I demonstrated just now, they can talk to us about anything. Our most important message is we want people to know that the Samaritans are here for everyone. Next slide, please. I think you might have gone over 2, actually. No? Right. Just before I talk about this slide, I'll talk about what we do. We're available around the clock every single day of the year. And we do get lots of calls on Christmas Day. We reach out to people in their own communities. We work in partnerships, and we influence others to take action. We're always available round the clock, though the commitment is individual volunteers. We are able to provide emotional support 24 hours a day by phone, email, letter, or face-to-face. We don't only sit and listen, we also take support into our communities. We take presentations into schools, workplaces, railway stations, especially when there has been an incident on the railway, hospitals, and we also have a special branch which is called our festival branch that goes to all the outdoor festivals. And we use our expertise to influence government when they're talking about bringing in legislation, etc. The media and other outside agencies to take action in order to reduce the suicide rate. Right, next slide, please. No, the next one, please. That's it. So how can people contact us? They can call us, email us, write to us. Not so many people write to us, but we do get letters, and they are dealt with by a particular branch that deals with all the correspondence. And they can come and visit us in the branches. Unfortunately, because of COVID, that's reduced at the moment, and we're hoping to be able to open up where our branches where people can come and visit. We also are piloting at the moment live chat, which obviously younger people tend to be using live chat, but it's not widely known at the moment because it's a pilot to see how successful live chat will be. And it's also to get enough volunteers trained in how to maintain live chat. And for any Welsh listeners listening, we do have a Welsh line should anybody want to speak to us in Welsh. And we do actually, if we do have people who cannot converse in English, we do try to find a volunteer who can speak a foreign language. Luckily, we don't have many cases like that. Next slide, please. As that slide says, that people can come into their local branch and speak to a Samaritan face to face. Not very many people know that facility is available, but it is there. Right, I will stop there. Are there any questions that anybody would like to ask?
So we've had a couple in the chat.
Good.
So I'll read these out to you. Someone has asked, how does someone sign up to do the calls? So I guess to receive the calls.
Right. To receive the course or the Become a Samaritan?
I think they mean to become a Samaritan, yeah.
Ah, right. Very easy. If you go on to the Samaritans website, there's a facility there to sign up. You'll then be directed to your own branch, and then you'll be contacted from your local branch. For instance, if you lived in the Basildon, Thurrock, Brentwood area, you would be directed to our recruitment officer. You will then go through an interview process, because we like to weed out, I don't like the expression, but to weed out anybody who's felt is unsuitable. You've got to be 18 years of age, and then once you've gone through that interview process, you'll be signed up for a course which used to be 10 modules over sort of 10 weeks, but it's slightly smaller now. You then go through that process, and if you're successful, you will work with a mentor who will guide you through 10 sessions. You're with a mentor. At first it'll be you listening into the mentor, then it'll be the other way around. And then once you've done them 10, you then go on to another 4-module course. And then if you get through that, you will become a fully qualified Samaritan. It surprised me somewhat what the training was initially, the length of it, but it is very good training and very intense. And you're also asked to do, when you get through all that, each year to do 5 hours of training. But a lot of that these days is done online. Right. Any other? There was another question, I think, Ashley.
Yeah, so the next one is, how many calls are from men, and what have you done to try and engage more men?
Good question. It's roughly, I would say, off the top of my head, I haven't got statistics, but I would say from experience, it's probably 60-40, men being the 40. I have done some presentations into organisations which are mostly men, but it is very difficult to engage men. But you know, if anybody's got any brainy systems how I could, I would love to hear about it.
Thank you. And the next one is, what emotional support or supervision do call handlers have?
Great. That's a good question. When you go on shift, you have a leader and contact, except in the big branches, but I use my own branch. You have to book on to your leader to tell you there and everything's all right, and the leader can pass anything on to you. During your shift, you can phone your leader at any time, but at the end of the shift, you have to unload all your calls to the leader, and that process could take a little while. But what we don't want is our volunteers going home with that problem. There is also a deputy director on duty for the week, 24 hours for the whole week, who's also available to assist the leader, but also the caller. And what I do when I'm a leader, if a caller's had a particular difficult call, I always ring. If it's during the day, I ring them in the evening to see if they're all right. I'll ring the following day. But our deputy directors and director are available all the time to assist our volunteers. And even when we're doing outreach work, we still have a leader who we can refer to during that period you're doing outreach. For instance, we had volunteers at Basildon Festive Fair on Saturday, but if any of those were spoken to, although they're not there for that purpose, but if they are, there is a leader available. I think, I'm being terribly biased, I think the welfare of our callers is looked after very well.
Thank you. Someone has asked, where is the local branch for Middle Essex?
Right, well, there's one in Chelmsford, there's one in Colchester, and there's one in Southend. So if they live in Middle Essex, obviously Chelmsford would be the branch.
Thank you. And someone has asked, what has your experience being a Samaritan been like? What have you taken from it?
It's been great fun. Now, I know that might sound strange, but you get a great deal of satisfaction, and it's been, although it's difficult sometimes when you're getting a difficult call. You always work in pairs, so within the operations room where you're taking the calls, there's always someone else. But we do have a nice social side as well, because we think it's important to let volunteers meet each other outside of the strict Samaritans work, and that's where the fun comes in. Like, for instance, next Saturday we're doing a walk from along Southend Pier and back with just for the fun of it, and just get together and make, and we run barbecues and meals out, restaurants and that type of thing. So it is fun, but it is a serious thing.
Thank you. The next question is, how would you help someone that isn't ready to help themselves?
Have you set all these questions up, Ashley? Well, the person is contacting us and we're not contacting them, so therefore behind their question, it must be that they would like some help. But it's just a matter of talking to them, letting them tell us what they want to tell us, not giving them answers, but giving them options and allow them to make their own mind up. I think that answers the question.
The next one is not a question, but pleased to see you are working with organisations such as EPUT to spread the word and let people know about the fantastic service you offer.
Well,
that's a good one.
We do a service with EPUT anyway, because clinicians or therapists can refer patients to us by just telling us their name and phone number, and we can then contact them when they're being discharged, which I think is a very good service, and it's been going for a couple of years now. And the patients appreciate our contacting them, and they often say it's nice to know there's someone else we can contact.
Thank you. The next one I think we kind of covered, but just to recap, they've asked, do you offer any services for people who do not have English as a first language?
Yes, as much as we can.
Thank you. And a question from Nick. I'm part of a group run by Healthwatch Essex called the Fellas Forum, and it's aimed at like-minded men from varied backgrounds with a view to support each other from a mental health perspective. And he said, would anyone be able to join one evening and talk through the great work that you do?
Absolutely, I'll be more than happy to do it.
Great.
If you can take the details Ashley, we can then contact.
Sure. Nick, if you wouldn't mind publishing your email address, then we'll be in touch. And someone has also asked, do you signpost?
Yes, we have official signposting. We can only signpost to the officially places like mine or places like that. We can't think of a thing in our own mind and just refer somebody to that. For instance, we don't refer people to Alcoholics Anonymous, but we do to Drinkline. So it's a very strict list of places we can signpost to.
Okay, thank you. So I think that is all the questions for now. So I'm just going to close the Q&A. Is there any more on your presentation?
No, except, oh yeah, there is. If anybody has got any other questions they can think of, if they want to send them to you, Ashley, you can send them on to me and I'll respond to them. That's the last slide. That's our phone number, our national phone number, 116123, which we try to instill on people that they should have it on their telephone. If you want to send an email, they can send an email to joe@samaritans.org. The reason we actually it just goes to an anonymous, as a fictional person. And to write, you can write free post Samaritans letters, and they go to the the branch that deals with correspondence. And then to find your nearest branch, you can go online and find the opening times of that branch. One of the problems is that if someone turns up, if the volunteers are on the phone, they may have to wait a while. But that's it. Thank you for listening. I hope you found it informative and useful. And thank you very much. And thank you, Ashley, for arranging it.
Thank you. We'll end the event now, but a recording will be available in case you missed it.